And that's why I say your podcast isn't about you. Your business isn't about you. It's about the consumer. It's about the customer. It's about the client. And if you can facilitate a positive experience and go above and beyond, you'll probably end up winning. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode number 41, The Importance of Messy Action. Big fan of messy action. Today, for episode number 42, Your Podcast Isn't About You. I did a podcast breakthrough session today with a wonderful member of the community. And this person and I got along really well because we had a very similar belief about podcasting and about adding value in general. I said, look, this is where a lot of people get stuck, okay? Anytime we're talking about a freebie or a free offer or any offer, really, I think what has happened for a long time, people would ask themselves, what is the simplest thing I can create to get this person to work with me? Or what is the simplest thing I can create to get this person to move through the business? I do not think that works anymore. I think what we're actually trying to accomplish is adding value to somebody. And I think the only real way to add value to somebody is to start with them in mind. So the reason I titled this episode, Your Podcast Isn't About You, is not because your podcast doesn't have to do with you speaking and who you are and it's not related to you. The reason is we have to stop asking ourselves, how do I get the most out of giving somebody the least? Now, I understand, yeah, that's a fine line, right? But this is what I get so often. People come to me and say, I want to get people to sign up to my mailing list. What do I do? Then this is the next thing they say. Should I do like a free ebook? Should I do like a 5-step PDF? Like, how should I do that? And I always say, you should figure out what the most valuable piece of content is based on that level of your business. That's what you should do. And then if people are going to sign up to the email list, it's actually going to be worth it. And then when they're on your email list, you figure out, how do I add value consistently? Not, I'm just going to send them, whatever. I'm going to send them an update every month, or I'm going to try to sell something every week. That's just not, it's not about you. It's about the listener. How do you make the experience better for the listener? So this is my thought process. Okay. I think we went through this in one of the earlier episodes, but if you're thinking of your podcast as a business, this is what I always recommend in the beginning. So social media is the top of your business business model. Excuse me, I can't talk today. So social media is the top. From social media, you want people to listen to the podcast. From the podcast, you want people to go to some sort of group usually, because the one thing a podcast doesn't have is a built-in community. From there, whatever that community is, Facebook group, Discord, whatever you want that to be, I like a freebie. Now, here is where people either get confused or just have a difference of opinion. I'll just put it that way, because maybe my way isn't right for everybody. I completely agree. A freebie for me is not a free 5-page ebook or a free 5-step PDF. A freebie for me, what I like is I like a monthly meetup, or a monthly mastermind, or a monthly masterclass, however you want to phrase it. And here's why. Because it's super, super valuable. That's the reason. I'm not focused as much on scalability as I am value. Because look, there's a lot of people who are way more focused on supply than they are demand. Okay, so all I mean by that is there's a lot of people who say, well, I don't want to get to the point where I have to do so much work in the podcast. I don't want to have to coach 15 people. Like, that seems like too much work. Trust me, it is harder to get 15 clients than you think. There's a lot of time for you to revamp the system between 0 and 15 clients. There's a lot of time. 15 clients do not come overnight. I understand maybe for most people, one-on-one coaching isn't super scalable, but get 3 clients and figure that out that way. Don't just say it's not scalable, because it's also one of the most valuable things you can do. So this is my thought process. Rather than saying, I'm going to send somebody a 5-step PDF, which is very scalable, you make it once and send it off. I love that. Down the line, I would rather you jump on a live Zoom with 15 people and add value for 45 minutes, and then do a 15-minute Q&A at the end. And then as your call to action, have people join you for a free call. If you benefited, or if you found value from what we talked about today and you want to go deeper, click the link in the chat and you can book a free call, just like I do, right? Because if you're going to book a free call with me, it means that you know me, like me, and trust me at a deeper level, and I'm going to add value. That's the goal. It's not a sales call, it's to add value. So the reason I like that is because I think people now understand that we've kind of overused how do I get the most out of somebody by giving them the least. It doesn't really work anymore. Email, I don't think email lists work like they used to. I don't think they do. As somebody who hates being on email lists, the second you send me an email that isn't valuable, I'm unsubscribing. I'm just not interested. I'm just not interested in it. I have enough things going on where I don't need to be reading emails that are trying to sell me stuff, right? Now, of course, there's a time and a place for that, but that's the first email I get from somebody. It's probably not going to work out, right? Because it's not about me, it's about them. It has to be about the consumer. It has to be about the listener. So I like doing things that are not scalable. And that's why I say your podcast isn't about you. Your business isn't about you. It's about the consumer. It's about the customer. It's about the client. And if you can facilitate a positive experience and go above and beyond, you'll probably end up winning. There's this old adage you hear people say, under promise and over deliver. I don't like the under promise part. What if we just promise and then over deliver, right? That's the ultimate goal. So when I'm thinking of coaching, when I'm thinking of sending followers videos, which I have been drastically messing up lately, so my apologies. I'm trying to get back into that. I've just been very overwhelmed lately. But again, the reason I'm overwhelmed is because it's not scalable. But what isn't scalable is super valuable, right? I want you to think of this. Imagine if whoever your favorite musician, artist, actor, actress is, if they only autograph one thing ever, how valuable is that going to be? As compared to, imagine if they autographed a million pieces of, a million pictures of themselves. It's not going to be super valuable. There's a million of them, right? One of those is super scalable. One of those is super valuable. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have both. But what I have found with most people is they are focused on scalability first, not value first. And if you're focused on scalability, you may never get to the point where you actually have to worry about scaling or scalability. If you can say to yourself, okay, as a consumer, as a listener, as a potential client, as a community member, what would I take value in? If somebody sent me a video when I followed them that was personal and not like a copy and paste, wow, I would really appreciate that. Okay. I would love if instead of getting a free 5-page PDF that I'm never going to look at, somebody did a mastermind or a masterclass where I could literally see them live in person. The person that I listen to all the time on a podcast, I could see them in person on Zoom and I could ask them any question I want. Interesting. That's valuable.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
That's valuable. So this is my only intention for this episode. When you're thinking of your podcast and your content and who you have on as a guest and the Facebook group or whatever group you have and your email list and your coaching and your products and your services, I think it would benefit you to think as much about the person as you are yourself. I would probably say more, but I understand that can be a challenge. But I really think that's something that a lot of us have backwards, where we've been taught, and you see ads for this all the time. Like, instead of doing, imagine having to do 10 coaching calls a day. What if you could only do one? Group coaching is for that. It's like, yeah, 100%. But it is also, group coaching is less valuable than one-on-one coaching from the user perspective because you can't be as specific. And it's also roughly 10 times as hard to fill because you require 9 more people. So there are pros and cons to all of this, but if you're coming at it from the perspective of, okay, one-on-one coaching with me is going to be super valuable. Let me price it accordingly and let me try to do it. And let me find out through challenge that 5 clients is too many. that's cool. Maybe you get to that point, you realize, well, this isn't scalable. But just because it's not scalable does not mean it's not valuable for you to try. And it doesn't mean it's not valuable for your audience. So that's really what I wanted to touch on in this episode. I've just met so many podcasters who the reason they don't have demand. So just a quick, I'm not assuming you don't know this, but I want to make sure I say it just for anybody who doesn't know. Supply and demand. Okay. So a lot of us are focused on creating demand. Right? That's the thing that we all need. Demand is 100 people want to coach with me. So if 100 people want to coach with me and I can only accept 10 people at a time, I can change my prices. I can make a waiting list. The demand is very, very, very high. The demand is greater than supply. Therefore, the supply price can change. The supply intention can change. Okay? For a lot of us, we're starting from a place of there is very little demand, but we're too focused on supply. We're trying to withhold supply. AKA, you have two people that might want to work with you one-on-one, but you're already saying to yourself, nah, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to charge $1,000 an hour. It's too much work. You don't have the demand to know that yet. You have plenty of supply. If you have 2 hours a week, you have the supply, right? And that's the mindset that I think a lot of us are trying to go into this with, or we're being tricked, okay? One of the interesting things that I've learned, and maybe this is personal to me, but I'll go on podcasts, and one of the things that oftentimes comes up is like your business should work for you. And the reason you start a business is so you can work less. Sure, maybe that is it. Maybe you're starting a podcast because you want to work less and you want to make more money and have more success. Sure. But you have to understand that in the beginning, it's not about you. You're going to work more most likely, and you're most likely going to make less. Now, eventually that can switch, but I just want to make sure that you're going in with a sustainable intention. That's all. And I've just met so many people who are trying to get the most results with the least effort. I'm not saying there isn't a time and a place for that, right? Obviously, we want to make sure we're valuing our time, and we want to understand how our inputs are leading to outputs and all of that, of course. But if you can understand that some of the most valuable things you can do for your community are also the least scalable, I think that's an important thing to understand. It doesn't mean you have to do everything that way, right? But it also doesn't mean you have to have everything super scalable. I think that's an important understanding to have, especially for most of us who, in the beginning, there's not going to be a lot of demand. I mean, if you're getting 50 people to listen to each episode and you talk about coaching or you talk about free calls, if there's 50 people listening, okay, and 10% of the people listening reach out for a free call, that's 5 people. And 10% is an outrageously high number. If 5 people reach out for a free call, that is a great problem to have. That's demand, right? That's a good level of demand for free. But that also is not super scalable, but it's super valuable. So that is really the point I want to drive home here is at the end of the day, we have to build demand. And you build demand through showing up. You build demand through adding value. And oftentimes you build demand through doing things that aren't scalable. Then as the demand increases, you can shift the way you deliver the supply. But I think a lot of people are trying to teach you that backwards, right? Like you should never coach for free. It devalues you. If you've never coached before, I would rather you coach for free and get the understanding of how coaching actually works, and then hopefully build up some of the confidence and get rid of some of the imposter syndrome and see if you actually want to coach, right? There's a drastic difference between coaching for free and then charging $150 an hour to coach. There's just a lot that goes into it from a mindset perspective. When it's free, you can be more yourself, and you don't have to worry about like, this has to be the most valuable call ever of all time, because there's no funds being exchanged. So it allows you to kind of be more of who you are, and it allows you to figure out how you would coach. Imagine if I was getting paid $100,000 to do this episode. I would do it drastically different. It would be completely different, but it wouldn't necessarily be better for me to do that because I wouldn't be able to talk in certain ways, right? So I just think that's an important understanding. So last point, last connection, last time I'll say this just because I've been saying it a lot. I don't think your podcast is about you. It's not how do I make this as easy and scalable as possible, especially in the beginning? I think it's how do I add the most value to my community so they understand that I care about them. That is the thing I will leave with. Now, eventually, I will have a Facebook group and I will do monthly meetups and all of that stuff. I'm not doing that currently. The reason I'm not doing that is because I'm just not able yet, just because I don't have the time. But I also know that's a mistake because that's one of the most valuable things in the world I can do. If you've ever had a question and you don't want to reach out on social or whatever it may be, maybe you're nervous or you're scared or whatever. If I said, hey, I'm doing a meetup this weekend, or it probably wouldn't be on a weekend, this Friday at noon, I'm going to do a meetup, and you can, the topic is, 5 ways to be a better interviewer. And if you have any questions, please bring them. You don't have to have your camera on. You can be totally anonymous and you can type your question in the chat. You might come to that and you might say, wow, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this. And you might look at this podcast and you might look at me in a completely different way. I want the same for you. I really, really want the same for you. And that's what's worked for us. I can only share what has worked for us. That's it. I can only share that. That's really all I can share. The podcast breakthrough session I did today, I don't know if this person would ever be interested in working with me, with exchanging funds, with paying us to help with their show, but I enjoy this human being, and I know me doing a podcast breakthrough session with them, they will never look at me the same. And if they ever are interested in exchanging money to get help with a podcast, it most likely will be with us, right? That call wasn't for me, it was for that person. It's not scalable for me to do free calls forever, right? When we're making millions of dollars a year, it doesn't seem to make any sense. But the less scalable it becomes, the more valuable it becomes. So that's the last time I'll say that, I promise. All right. If you are interested in a free call, please reach out. Again, not going to sell you on anything. I just want to add value. And anybody who's done a free call will attest to that. If you've done a free call, shout out to you. You're the best. I appreciate it. I just love talking to the community, and helping you helps me teach better. It helps me learn more, and it helps me provide more value. And at the end of the day, that is what I am all about. Next week for episode number 43, write that down. 3 questions for every level of your podcast business. So I know I do a lot of 3 questions, 3 ways. I don't know why that is, but this is an interesting thing because I think people forget why people are moving through their business. Okay. So understanding that your podcast, for many of us, not everybody, but for many of us, your podcast is only as important or as valuable as what you do before and after. So the social media before and wherever people go after, we're going to talk about the questions for each level of your podcast business. As always, Podcast Growth Nation, I love you all. I appreciate you all very, very, very much. Keep on podcasting. Keep on crushing it. And I will talk to you all next week.